Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
Hello, everyone. It's Julie Wilson, and I'm here for another week of Let's Be Well Together. Today, I am with Elise Seifert. Elise, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. So tell me what's on your mind today.
I was hoping today that we could talk about water conservation.
Oh, great topic.
Super important. I know I was fortunate enough to spend 6 weeks in Jordan in the Middle East. And I had some experiences there where we had to conserve water pretty seriously. And it really shaped my views on how I can conserve water here in Canada.
First of all, let me ask you, why Jordan and what were you there for?
I was participating in a university course. So it was a 6-week archeological dig in Jordan.
Oh,
and
fun.
It was an incredible experience. And if you want to hear more about that experience, I did talk about it in episode 44. So if you look back in the archives, you can hear more about exactly what that dig was. But I know Jordan is a country that has limited water. The house that we were living in, we had about 30 people living there because it was all of the participants. And we would only get water once a week, would be delivered to the house. And so we had just that water for the week. So we had to really conserve and stretch the water as much as we could.
So I guess there were no 5-minute showers.
No, showers were short and sweet, which was difficult because we were out digging in dirt for hours a day. And you'd come back and we were told to turn on the shower and then get yourself wet, turn off the shower, lather up everywhere, and then quickly rinse off. And we were also told to collect any of the water that was rinsed into a bucket. So you kind of were showering with a bucket in the shower where you would try to collect as much water as you could.
Okay, so then the water you collected, what would you do with that then?
That would be used to flush the toilet. So instead of flushing the toilet with the handle, you would take the bucket and pour it into the toilet and just kind of manually flush the toilet as much as you could. And we would do the same thing when washing our hands. We would collect any water into a bucket in the sink, and we would use that to flush the toilet as well.
That's a great idea, actually.
It is.
Talking about the shower, I started to do that because I realized, you're just standing there and letting the water flow as you're soaping up. I have started to do that, and it does make a difference in terms of if you take a look at your water bill over time and everybody starts practicing that, it makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. And I think it's something that people talk a lot about when brushing their teeth.
Yes.
Make sure you turn off the water as you're brushing, but not really something that people talk about when showering. But I think it's a very similar practice.
Exactly. And you don't need the water pouring down as you're lathering up. It's a mindset that it takes a little bit to get into, to remind yourself, but the benefits are huge.
Huge. And I know while I was doing these practices, I thought, I'm definitely going to bring this back to Canada with me. I'll put a little basin, I'll put a little tub in the sink and it'll be great. But I find I don't because I don't have to. So I think having to do it is different than, having the option to do it. But I
agree with you. And I think folks find that when power goes out, for example, or you're in the country and something happens to a line from your well or something like that. As you said, if you have the option, you don't tend to take that option to turn off the water or to collect the water. But when you're forced to in those situations, when power's out or, your tank's down or something like that, it's surprising how little water you actually need, right?
It really is. Or camping, you think about when you're camping.
Oh, camping is another good example. Exactly. Like you make do with very little water.
You do. And I have seen actually toilets that are designed now where right above the tank is your sink. So you'd wash your hands kind of above your toilet, which sounds a little funny, but any of that water gets collected into the tank. So then is reused in the future.
That's a great idea.
It's an amazing idea. And I always think we should get one of those. We really want to have a new bathroom in our house. We're looking to install a half bath. And I'm like, we really need to get one of those. It would save so much water. But my only hesitancy is, how will it look for resale? Will other buyers appreciate the toilet, or will they think, oh, I don't want to wash my hands above the toilet, So that's always something to consider. But I do imagine that it would really help with water.
I've never seen that. After we're done, I'm definitely going to be going to Google it because I've never seen that. But it's a really interesting concept. Think of like a trailer situation where you don't have very much room. And you often see trailers or motorhomes where there is a separate little sink. That's a great idea for something like that. And frankly, it'd be something different and cool too.
It would be. I think right? So too. And I just know, water tanks or toilet tanks, they need a lot of water. So any kind of water you could save for that, I think is great. Yeah. I do know though, now when I'm at home, sometimes I do things and I think, wow, I'm wasting a lot of water by doing this. So for example, in our basement, we live in a very old home. We have an unfinished basement and there's a dehumidifier that we run at all times.
Yes.
And I have to empty it out. And I would just look at all the water that I'm emptying out down into this drain. And I'm thinking, this is just such a waste of water. Of course, I can't cook or eat with this water, but what can I do with it? I started filling up watering cans so that I can water my gardens with it. And that's been a great use of water.
That's what my dad does. Same thing, older home, and collects that water and uses it for plants. Yeah.
And it's just an easy way to not let that water go to waste.
Exactly. Because it's easy enough, as you said, to just simply dump it down the drain. Whereas filling up water cans or actually going out to the garden, that takes a bit more effort, but it's so worth it because from the air, let's use it for the plants.
Yeah. And saving myself on my water bill in the long run.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So were there any other interesting strategies that you learned in Jordan?
I think a lot of it was mostly in the showering area, just because I had never really considered having to limit my water in that capacity before. Another hard one was laundry. We did all of our laundry by hand.
Okay.
And, you really wanted to limit how much water you used. So I will say that was a challenge. And I don't know if I really had the time to find the best way to do it where I could really get my clothes clean using a limited amount of water. And I know typically we would do laundry later in the week. And that was when there were times where we ran out of water. So we were told, we're out of water. There's nothing we can do. So we might have to just go without. So that was tricky. But I think it would be interesting to try to explore how to do laundry by hand using a limited amount of water. That was really tricky.
Talking about laundry, that's one thing that I know, and just having teenage sons, the wearing once and throwing in the laundry.
I was so bad about that as a teenager. Yes.
And it's like, wait a minute. You have had that shirt on for, an hour? How about you wear it again? Or that sweatshirt? That's always what I'm thinking too, and constantly reminding that you've only worn that for one day. How about you wear that again?
Yeah. Especially things like a sweatshirt where you're wearing something underneath.
Exactly.
How dirty could it possibly be?
Right. So there's little things. There's so many little things. Oh, I think you and I have highlighted some really important ones and hopefully some takeaways for folks, because I think there's simple things that you can do that while you're not eliminating, it'll help, save a few dollars, right? And help the environment as well.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the area of balance. We'll explore work-life balance with a very busy person, Karen Redman, who is Regional Chair of Waterloo Region. Welcome, Karen.
Good to see you, John.
As I said recently when Karen was here, I could go on at length about her background. She has an extensive background in politics and helping our community. Waterloo Region is a busy and thriving region, and she's regional chair. She's also a friend who Sheila and I met when I was part of Rotary. At a very high-level intro, Karen has represented Kitchener on the Board of Education, municipal government, and in Canada's Parliament for over 20 years. She's committed to making a personal contribution to a better quality of life for her family, her community, and Canada as a whole. She has a master's degree in political science and an honors bachelor degree in English. She's the recipient of the Queen's Jubilee Medal and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Karen's husband is Warren, and they have 4 adult children and a Westie named Roxy. So work-life balance, wow, I'm almost afraid to ask a regional chair what that looks like. But let's take a run at this. So where do we start, Karen?
So if I'm going to be really honest, John, work-life balance does not exist.
Okay.
And I've said that to all of my kids, and I say that to young women who often are aspiring to run for political office, and they say, how do you do it? I would tell you, I know I'm out of whack when I'm with my family and I'm thinking about work, or I'm at work thinking about my family. And to me, that's a really good self-awareness check saying, maybe I need to rethink this.
But then if that's the case, do you ever get to a spot where you are at work and you're not thinking about your family? Or you are with your family and not thinking about work? Like, do you find any comfortable positions?
I've worked really hard at compartmentalizing my life so that I'm 100% at work when I'm at work and 100% with my family. And we have 5 grandchildren too, which I have to tell you is the victory lap of parenting. So
Okay.
parenting. Can't wait for you and Sheila to join that club. It is just so much fun.
It's going to happen soon, actually.
Oh, really?
Oh, you don't know? I guess I didn't tell you, but Elise is expecting a baby end of October, early November. So we're going to be grandparents for the first time.
Okay, so the huge issue is you have to decide what they're going to call you.
Actually, I was talking to Warren, and I'm going to steal his because his middle initial is G, and so it's G. So is mine. So I like either G or maybe G-Dad. But anyway, we'll figure that out.
Anyway, it's fabulous. Warren and I have been very blessed. And there has never been a stage in my life, John, where I didn't feel what I was doing is important. And my message to a lot of young women, young parents, but often they're the moms. I was an at-home mom for 5 years. We had 4 children in not quite 5 years. And I stayed home with all of them until our youngest son was going into grade 1. And I knew that what I was doing was very important to our family, to their future, to society. I never apologized for being the at-home mom. It made me probably dull company at a cocktail party, but I knew what I was doing is important. And I felt that way about every opportunity that's been offered to me. And lots of it's been in public life. Some of it was being CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Waterloo Region. And I was on the board. The CEO stepped away and I resigned from the board and stepped up. So there's opportunity everywhere. And I think being self-aware is something I really aspire to. Having said that, you do have to carve out time for yourself. You do have to stay physically active. You do have to do something that nourishes you. And for me, sometimes that's been working out. Sometimes it's carving out time to golf a couple times a summer, at least with my husband. All of those things make a difference. I also love live theater. And for me, I go home and I sort of, whether it's Stratford or Drayton or something that's local, we try to go to the Bruce County Playhouse in Southampton during the summer. And it's just so entertaining. And that kind of stuff really feeds me in a way that brings my bounce back when sometimes I'm feeling like I've got a lot of weight on my shoulders.
You know, to hear someone say there is no work-life balance, and you're talking to someone who's trying to figure out ways where people can work towards balance, it's a little hard to take, but you know, I think actually I agree with you in this sense. So I don't think there's work-life balance at a specific time, right? So this very moment, I don't have a perfect work-life balance. However, when I think about my life over the course of a life, and I've realized this as I've gotten older. So I think about this, you talk about doing really important work. And I like to think I'm doing important work too in different things. And I kind of think, you know what, if I was retired and I was looking back and I hadn't done some of these important things because I wanted to find some kind of balance that somebody told me I should have, I probably wouldn't feel that great. I probably would think, I probably could have done that. And so I think of it more long term. And in order to have at the end of my life balance over a lifetime, I want to be able to go back and say I worked really hard and got a lot done and I was too busy, but that's okay.
Can I just say, I think we're in violent agreement on this.
Okay.
Because there is no work-life balance in that if I go to the studio 2 days a week and I make sure that I read before bed for half an hour every night, it's all going to be fine. Because there are days that the wheels just fall off the bus.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you're doing or what role you're looking at. So when I say there's no work-life balance, it's elusive. And you have to work at it. And sometimes it's better than others. And some days you just sort of look in the mirror and go, this was not a good day. You mentioned Roxy in the intro, and I've had roles in the past. One of them was being whipped for the Liberal Party when we were in government. And sometimes it felt like the whole world hated me. And I would say, but I have a dog. And when I come home at night, my dog wags her tail and she's happy to see me.
Yeah, dogs love us unconditionally. I don't have a dog, but that's what everyone who has a dog tells me. But
absolutely.
Let me give you a different analogy too. Like another way I look at it is I started long distance running. I never actually believed that there was anything called a runner's high, but I experienced it a couple of times. And now when I think about that, I realize, okay, well, let's say by analogy, the runner's high is your perfect balance. But I've run 1,500 times and most of them are a combination of, boy, this is really hard, or oh, I'm not going as fast as I want, or doop, I'm not noticing anything. And only twice did I feel that feeling. And maybe that's life too. Maybe we try and do all these pieces to the balance puzzle as we go along. And just every once in a while, we kind of slide into that really perfect feeling, but it's fleeting and we have to appreciate and accept that.
Yeah, absolutely. I envy you that. I am not a runner. But I found during the pandemic, what I missed more than anything was my long car rides, because the region is basically about 5 federal ridings. And I spent a lot of time in my car because I feel very committed to the fact that the region involves the 4 townships and the 3 urban areas. So even though I live in Kitchener and that's where we raised our family, I look at a very pan-regional approach to everything. And driving in the car by myself, thinking, really helps me be grounded. I always call it the big think. I've had a big think about something and maybe try to either empathize with a different point of view or at least understand what the motivation is of other people coming. So I'm not a runner, but I totally relate to that. And I guess the other thing, John, that you sort of touched on that I really agree with is I aspire to be in the moment. So when I talked before about compartmentalizing, it's the good and the bad at work, the good and the bad of parenting, the good and bad of, grocery shopping, whatever it is. What you don't want to do is look back on your life and go, where did that 20 years go? I mean, we probably all do it anyway, but then you can look back and think of either milestones or things you did or didn't do. And I think that that's sort of what is the most enriching part of the privileged lives that so many of us lead in Canada.
Now that I think of it, maybe I move off the concept of work-life balance when I'm living my everyday life. And I like your idea of living in the moment. And that's something I really try and do. I try and be present in the moment, whatever I happen to be doing. I also, this concept of being in the car and the big think, a lot of my clients have heard me say to them, okay, great. We've talked about this. We've figured out the facts. We have an idea of what we want to do. Now let's sleep on it, right? Let's come back tomorrow. Let's let it percolate, I always say.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to that time alone. And if you can't find that time alone, it's really challenging. And I had that experience recently. So I've been walking to work a lot recently, but I had to work at home for a month. The reasons don't matter. And I was getting grumpy and I lost balance and I was frustrated and work was harder. Then when I finally could start walking to work again, which was now hard because I hadn't done it for a while, I realized that I had missed that time to think. I had missed that 50 minutes where I listened to an audiobook or music and where I can start my day fresh. So I'm guessing that you kind of need that driving time.
It surprised me how much I missed it when it wasn't there. COVID was hard on everybody, John. And, we've got inflation, we've got uncertainty, we've got political unrest globally. So I think that it's really important that you continue to find things that center yourself.
Okay, so I don't think we're giving up on the work-life balance. I'm trying to figure out a way to articulate it. What are you thinking, Karen?
I would tell you that when I say those no work-life balance, it's not flicking a switch
Right.
and it's not checking a box. So life is a journey, and I totally believe that and embrace that. So when I say those no work-life balance, it doesn't get fixed. It's something that you continue as part of your journey. You have to be intentional about it. And again, there are days when things just don't go right.
If I can make a little bit of a pitch, because it's my kind of whole approach, I think what you're saying is it's not overly simplistic. There's no like simple answer, and you don't be like, okay, I did this much of this and this much of this, so I have balance. And that's why for us, that's why we explore 8 different areas of wellness. And that's why we try and think of actual things, actual activities we can do in each of these areas to foster it. And that's why we talk about doing them over a course of a lifetime. And when you're feeling off, like I do think though that when you're feeling off, there is a way to do a check-in and say, what am I missing? So maybe during the pandemic, you hadn't realized it, but you weren't doing all those long drives. And had you had a chance to sit back and do a little check-in, you'd say, you know what? I don't have my alone time. So maybe I'm going to force myself to go out for a walk by myself for an hour every day, even though I'm just going to end up back at my same house and work inside. But there is something to figuring out these areas of wellness and the activities and checking in.
I would agree with that. And the only other thing that I would say is that's what works for me. For other people, it might be going into a library where there's other people. It might be going into a shopping mall because that becomes white noise. So that's what works for me. And when it was absent from my life, I noticed it and I missed it.
Absolutely. It's always person specific. And like the perfect example for me is social. So Sheila is an incredibly social person and I'm an introvert. So there have been a couple times recently where we had multiple events in the same week and she just fed off it. Like she was energized and I was exhausted, right? Because when she's in that big group, she's just getting more and more energized. If I'm sitting there and talking, it's draining. So different people react differently to different things. And so we all have to think about it for ourselves. And that's why I like the idea too of listening to people. What do you do? What do you do? And you might try it and it works for you. You might try something else and it doesn't.
Work-life balance doesn't mean you have a perfect life.
True.
I think it's the intentionality. And as you say, examining what in your life makes you feel better or gets you to a place where spilling the milk or having the car run out of gas isn't as devastating as it might otherwise be. So I really do think that it's, again, a process and a journey as opposed to getting it right.
Yeah, a couple quick points too. Like if you think about my areas of wellness, I often think of it, I say it's like a shield, right? So if you can build up 6 of the 8 areas are pretty strong and you spill the milk, it'll be easier to deal with. Spilling the milk obviously is an analogy. But if you happen to have a mental health issue when only 2 of them are strong, it's going to be a lot harder to deal with. And the other little kind of magic trick that I sometimes use that I think a lot of people forget is just to stop and look around wherever you are and just imagine the wonder of what's around you. It is incredible that we have intelligence and we're able to absorb the world with so many different senses. And it's sometimes, I just like to stop and say, you know what? It's tough right now, but let me just feel the wonder of the world around me for a second. And that seems to help sometimes, being in that moment.
I couldn't agree again more with you. And I have to tell you that about 5 years ago, my grandkids bought me a finch feeder and it's got Niger seed in it. It is ridiculous how happy I get when there's 3 and 4 little yellow finches in my feeder. And I revel in it. And I keep going, I don't know if this is good or not, but it just makes me so happy.
It's good. And I remember I was speaking with somebody who was telling me a little bit about the Hindu religion. And there's a concept of trying to be childlike, not childish. I don't really get it yet, but I think part of the concept is the wonder, feeling the wonder that a child feels when he sees that finch.
Yeah, and I would agree. We all need more wonder in our lives.
Okay, well, we are at the end. And as you know from the last time, I ask every guest the same question. And it kind of fits perfectly into our discussion today because the idea is we all have areas of wellness that are important to us. Not enough time to keep them going at any given time. So Karen, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
So I would have to say that the intellectual piece of wellness is very, very important to me. It's part of what attracts and sustains me in the jobs that I've had. And I tend to read for fact. I do belong to a book club, and I am probably the world's worst book club member because I usually read the first 200 pages by the time the meeting happens. But the intellectual stimulation of the people, most of them are retired Crown attorneys. So it's a very, very interesting group. I would like to learn more and be just a little bit kinder to myself and carving out time just to learn for the joy of learning. I loved school. I don't know if I needed that external validation that you get through marks, but I do love to learn. And it's great hanging out with our 5 grandkids and sort of looking at the world through their eyes. And you said, John, about with the Hindu religion and the sense of wonder, it's a do-over with grandkids. It's just, I'm so blessed. So I would like to read more for exploring information, I guess.
I've really been enjoying listening to audiobooks on Libby, which are free from the Kitchener Library or from any library when you use the Libby app. So I'm wishing you the best of luck with that. Yeah, I don't think I could go without keeping my mind active. And I've thought a lot about my personality traits. And I decided a little while ago that my favorite trait is curiosity. And reading satisfies that a lot. So I wish you the best of luck with that, Karen.
It's been great chatting with you, John. Thank you for inviting me on.
We're glad you're here, and we hope you're making wellness a priority. Hope you're getting something out of the podcast. And especially for people who are new, you might not know that the podcast was inspired by my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster. It's available on Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere where you can buy books online. And this is my pitch for you to buy a copy and have a read. I think it'll enhance the experience of the podcast, and it will also help us defray some costs because it's really expensive putting out a podcast. So grab a copy if you can. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
So I want to talk about something, a message for drivers. And you might think it's coming across as judgy, but that's not it. So as kind of an aside, and you'll probably hear this theme often as I go forward because it's something I'm gravitating towards. I'm trying to move away from judging generally, judging myself and judging other people. Mm-hmm. And I wished other people might do the same thing because I feel like judgment is a real problem when it comes to people experiencing well-being. But anyway, So I'm not being judgy. I just want to give my perspective here. I'm trying to tell drivers why some things are important to me as a runner, as a walker, as a biker, and how you can help take stress away from my life.
Right. And I also think it's important because we're trying to encourage people to get out there and move and do this and that. So we want it to be done safely.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Mm-hmm. You know, like that reminds me of in Brisbane, and we were talking about bike paths, and it's like, it's not good enough if someone like me, John Webster, is comfortable because I'm can take care of myself guide on a bike path. It has to be anybody using the bike path, a mother with their child who's comfortable. Okay. So here's what happened to me. I'm walking to work, and as I'm passing a pretty big driveway where people have to come in for different things, I could see a car coming the other way. He had his blinker on. And by the way, I also know that a lot of times the kind of car people are driving often shows how
what they're going to do,
how likely this is going to happen. And basically the more expensive the car, the more likely this is to happen. And studies support that, by the way. Okay. So I'm like, this guy, I can tell he looks at me and I'm a peon.
Okay.
A worthless individual who's
that's just in his way.
So lowly that I have to walk, and he's driving his fancy car. So like, basically I know I'm in his way. But so I'm like, okay, well, even though I shouldn't, I'll walk a little bit faster just because that's my personality.
Right.
So then I can tell just as I'm walking, he's going to time this perfectly. So just as I get to a certain spot, his car will breeze behind me, miss me by about a foot or less. And everything's fine, right? Because he's not going to touch me.
Right.
In his mind, he didn't interrupt me.
Right. But
I'm not a pylon. Okay,
right.
so I can imagine in a parking lot, if I'm driving or anyone's driving and there's a pylon, it's like, okay, well, as long as I miss the pylon by a foot or more,
Right.
it's good. But it doesn't work that way with me. And so what ended up happening was he caused me a lot of stress. And as you can tell by just the way I'm introducing this and with all the insults, some stress and put me in a bad frame of mind.
Right.
In a time where I'm trying to relax and start my work day in a chill way.
Enjoying your exercise.
Yeah.
and-
The message is, don't treat me like a pylon, please.
Right.
And the same for bikers, the same for runners, the same for walkers.
Yes.
If you're in a car, imagine that approaching somebody who could get hurt, or even like planning to do that, is going to make them start thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? And if you smile and wave and let them go by, they're like, yay, thank you very much. I'm in a great. But if you encroach them and come close to them and make them stressed and make them have to move faster, you're adding stress to their life, and you don't need to do that.
No, that's exactly right. We all need to be on the roads and the sidewalks together. Now, let me ask you a question. If you're crossing the crosswalk, like you're crossing the street, and I'm turning right or left, do I wait until you're completely off the sidewalk, or do I wait until you're on the other side of the traffic and then I go? Like even the other way around, if let's say I'm turning right and you're walking towards me and I'm turning right, but you're not even halfway through, should I turn right or should I wait until you go?
I don't know the answer to that. And I think it's different in every province and state, could be different. But I can tell you what I remember in the last couple of years. So in the last couple of years, a law came out saying that there's going to be a new rule. You have to let someone go all the way through a crosswalk before you can drive. So even if they're on the other side of the street.
Okay.
And that stressed me out because I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So if you're waiting, for example, if I'm driving and somebody's coming from my right and he completely crosses the two lanes and now he's in the lane of the cars going the other way, I'm not endangering that person at all.
At all. Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
But I ended up getting some clarification. The clarification came out that's at the stop. That's at the crosswalks with the flashing lights. You know, like, so if someone pushes a button at a pedestrian crosswalk that's set up for that with a flashing light.
Right. You should wait until
But
they
it
get
wasn't
on
at
the way.
every street light.
Okay.
So I think what people should do is look into it and find out what the rule is in their city, in their province.
Yeah.
But
Because
I think generally speaking, as long as you're at a regular stoplight and you're giving a very wide berth, I think you're okay.
Okay. Yeah. Because I usually wait until they're past the halfway point. You know, they've gone past that way, because I also want to be considerate of the cars behind me, right? Because they're waiting too, and they're going to miss the light. Like if you're turning left and you're waiting for the pedestrian, I do want to be considerate of everyone on the road, not just the walker or the biker or the. So we want to encourage that.
Yeah.
for
Basically, you want to be safe. You want to make sure you're following the rules. But, you know, getting back to the main point is like whatever you're doing in a car, people are not inanimate objects.
Exactly.
So if you think of them like an inanimate object, as long as you don't touch them, you're fine. You're going to end up doing a lot of stuff that causes people a lot of stress.
Exactly.
Okay. So that was just, it's not really a how to move your body, but it's for drivers, how to make people moving their bodies more comfortable. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It is sign-off time. It's John here with Sheila and Elise.
Hello.
Hello.
So we've got this scheduled in. Frankly, I can't even think right now. My work day started very early. I've been going nonstop. And as soon as we're done this, I've got to run around and do a bunch of stuff at home. And then I've got something else for work coming in. So unfortunately, I can't really think right now. My balance isn't too great. How are you doing, Sheila?
Oh, I'm doing very well. We had a great time in Collingwood this weekend. So we haven't been to Collingwood for a very long time. I would say almost a year. And this weekend was the first time that we got to go up there. So it was so nice. It was almost like coming home again, you know. The weather wasn't great. It was really windy and rainy, but it was just really lovely to hear the waves hitting the rocks and being out in the country and seeing the birds and the trees. And it was just really lovely. So that was the highlight of my week. What about you, Elise?
Well, it was back to school for me. So we had our first week back to school, and I'm in a new role this year that I've never done before. So it's been a lot of fun to be in a new position. And I'm in a role where I get to go into many different classrooms throughout the school. So it's been really great to get to know a lot of the different kids in our building, and I'm building a lot of relationships with them, which is awesome. So I'm really enjoying this new position, and I'm really enjoying my back to school. It's been a great week. So I cannot complain. And we were able to come visit you guys in Collingwood, which we always love. It was beautiful, got some swimming in. So I'm feeling great and hoping that my second week of school goes just as well.
Perfect. Well, let's all hope for that. And I'm so glad everyone could join us. And we will speak to you soon. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.